did that. There we go. Welcome, everybody. Episode 33 of Popcast Movie Club, if I can remember to change the title. I changed everything but the actual title of the thing. Great. Brilliant. So yeah, we're talking the rise and rise of Michael Rimmer. I guess being the selector, I'm sort of on hosting duties this time around. Joining me as ever is Owen.
Hey everyone.
And also AJ.
Yeah, has Owen been here the whole time?
Probably.
I know we can.
Yeah.
I know his thing is here, but we can't see him. So
I'm here. I just don't really have anything to say.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, at first I was thinking this is going to be one that most people wouldn't like, because even the people that made it didn't like it. In hindsight, they thought they were sort of they didn't write as good a script or direct a two job, but I think there's enough in here to make it sort of, I don't know, a hidden gem, maybe, I don't know.
I'd say that's probably accurate. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot falsely, but I feel like it actually probably does apply here because it's better than they thought it was at the time, and also you could definitely call it hidden. So
Yeah, the home media release is super out of print in the UK, yet alone even if it's anywhere in America. Even though with the way that certain political things have gone in recent times, it makes you wonder whether they predicted some of the stuff. Weirdly. I also do like the anonymity complex that Michael Rimmer has, because my impression is he's just this guy that's concocted this grand master plan and done it himself by passing off the time management person, and then somehow gets into the company, and like that's where his rise in the title actually really comes from. Yeah, we see the bit early on when he goes to the guy that owned the polling company, and he's like, I don't remember requesting a report. So it's like, did this guy just realize the crowd around me are so inept that I could get away with this?
he's basically like the episode of Seinfeld where Kramer went to the job he didn't have and nobody realized he didn't work there, mixed with Patrick Bateman. Like if Patrick Bateman did what Kramer did,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what this movie is.
Yeah, sort of a. Yeah, it starts off sort of innocently enough with.
Oh no.
Oh, already?
It didn't take long.
Bars moving, and that's an interesting one, because that desynced while I was talking. Normally, it's when I'm like not saying anything for minutes when it does that. So yeah, the advertising agency's in sort of flounders. The chief accountant's putting God knows how much money on the horses. One of them is wanting to rehearse more for his Strictly Come Dancing or whatever, Dancing with the Stars sort of ballroom routine. The boss is inept and probably misogynistic, with the way he was sort of chatting to his secretary.
Yeah.
And then Crowder is just Crowder. And then like it seems like and then is it also me hoping that this is how it's supposed to be portrayed. Like literally the next day, Rimmer's basically in charge of the entire building and has already had it refurnished. It's like the blooming, 24 hours of Gordon Ramsay. The restaurant is shit. Let's redecorate the place, and he's already like wheedling his way in.
Yeah, I loved the approach that they were going for, and basically the whole idea behind the movie, because it's like so many people in powerful positions, probably then, but especially now, it's those people that seem like they dropped from out of nowhere and just almost accidentally into massive success and massive power. And it's like that they're almost like this supernatural being where you have no idea where they came from, and it seems like nobody around them seems to know either. This person just exists. And
Yeah,
yeah, and to see how like this is probably how absurdly fast, and how there was surprisingly, it seems like this really painstakingly concocted thing, but it's when you go back and look at it, there's actually very few stepping stones from how he got to point A to point B.
yeah. Like,
Like a scary little amount.
trying to think. So from there, it goes to. I do like the way it. I didn't even acknowledge the actual bit at the very, very start with the guy talking about cancelling his contract by punching Arthur Lowe in the face, which I guess means they probably didn't do a good enough job. And then, of course, when we get it with the "we do mince, not dog food," and then even the line was, "Woof makes your doggy bark with joy." So much stereotypical stuff like no faults for it, and then instead,
I
I mean, go ahead, AJ.
I was gonna say I appreciated that punch to the face because when I went into this, I knew it was gonna be like a political satire, but when you hear political satire, it's still, if you go into a movie with just that label blind, it's still kind of hard to tell what kind of tone it's gonna be. Because like political satires could be really, really subtle, or they can be really over the top and obvious on purpose. And this kind of, and I love that punch kind of set the tone, but it but it also, it kind of seems to alternate between going big and going super subdued. And I like the fact that it's just kind of a mixture of all, because there's basically a joke or multiple jokes in every single scene of this movie, right?
I think
Like
so. Yeah, because the thing that I didn't, having watched this like probably 15 or 20 times at least, not just for this, but just in general. Only today, when catching up on it again, I noticed that by the secretary's legs is a giant lever arch file box, whatever, that's got a swastika on it. I never noticed the swastika before.
I don't know if this says anything about the times we live in, but I noticed it immediately. It was like the first thing I noticed about that show.
I wasn't paying attention to it the other times, I guess, or whatever. And then, and then that sort of is the start of, I guess, the downfall of his character. Eventually leads to him, pawning off all his furniture and paying off the 75,000 that he owes for basically not doing his job properly, and then to the denouement at the end. But I think it's fair if we bring that up at the end, because kind of a ballsy ending. But anyway, and then the actual marketing campaign that Rimmer thinks appropriate is basically softcore porn.
I actually had a question about that.
Okay.
Because you come into this movie and you know that it came out in 1970. And my question was, as I was watching this movie, and there were certain things in it that I was not expecting. Many things in it that I wasn't expecting. The question that came to mind was, when were British movies allowed, I guess, allowed to be this raunchy? Because I was kind of going down the American timeline where it was like we were getting progressively racier throughout the 60s, but I feel like Midnight Cowboy was like the real turning point as far as like mainstream movies getting to be super raunchy, which would have been, and Midnight Cowboy was just the year before this movie. So I'm curious if you guys were like the raunchiness was mainstream before, or was this like kind of in that area where it was starting to happen?
I think it was around the same time because what was it? Hair, the musical, would have been 68 or 69 that started on the West End. That had, infamous for its all the cast not naked on the in the one scene on the stage. Um, so it's probably in or around there. Um, I mean, the sort of, I mentioned it before, like the sex comedies. When I brought up Sex Lies of the Potato Men, trying to channel back to like the Robin Asquith Confession series, they were sort of like early 70s as well, sort of things. Then again, you had sort of the accidental sort of risque stuff when Barbara Windsor's boob, uh, she basically had her hands on her chest, and when the arm got taken away, the hand went away from the boob. Somehow that still has a PG certificate despite that. I guess because it's, brief slippage or so. I don't know what the terminology is. But yeah, and the only thing I can think of it being a 15 certificate for the sex references. Because there's no swearing in it. Anywhere. I mean, the closest you get is when he falls off the treadmill thing and goes dung. There's little to no swearing. It's literally just the nudity and the sexual innuendo in the like 2 or 3 scenes that probably gets it a 15 certificate. If you tone that down, you might even get it like a 12A sort of PG-13 in modern days, I would have thought. That every time the problem is every time they say Scorpio, I just think of Hank Scorpio from that Simpsons episode, especially with the way it's Scorpio and all that. But then we have did you notice the hidden joke that the guys put into the talk show bit?
It's the acronym for the show.
Yeah.
I think I missed that actually.
Stephen Hench is talking to you. Shitty. Which, considering how my very first pick for this had a random what the hell cameo from Harold Pinter, this one actually had a good cameo from Harold Pinter as the interviewer. Or, well, I say interviewer, sort of, I guess he's supposed to be sort of the political sort of presenter throughout a lot of the stuff, because he also hosted the election coverage when it gets to that. But then, of course, it also, just from that scene as well, like, they knew that the person that they were going to was, because they basically, it becomes like a giant sex survey that they do to ask people about their habits and whatever, and they purposefully work out the one guy in the crowd that didn't bring his wife. And then just like after they do their sort of thing, one nice little touch is when when Rimmer, as the head of Fairburns company, and then IPO, I think it's like Independent Polling Office or whatever, is the other one, and says like, would this swerve you to come to work with me? And I do like Denholm Elliott's dictation of like, yeah, that's pretty good. I especially like the zeros. and it's kind of amazing to see. I mean, there's a lot of comedy people in here. You know, you've got Peter Cook, you've got Arthur Lowe, you've got Ronnie Corbett in some random cameo who keeps getting accosted by John Cleese. I'm a Buddhist. Um,
By the way, I'm going to assume it was a combination of his height and the other guy's height, but I keep forgetting sometimes how fucking tall John Cleese is until I see shots like this movie.
yeah. I mean, they paid off. I think it was 5 or 6 years before this in a sketch that David Frost, who's one of the co-writers, did called a class sketch, where he had Cleese playing the upper class tall guy, Ronnie Barker playing the middle class middle height guy, and then Ronnie Corbett as the lower class sort of person. You know, with sort of lines like "I know my place," and when they do a whole thing of like "I look down on them," says the upper class guy, and then the lower class guy, being the shortest, is just like, "I've got a pain in the back of my neck." So that's probably why they did it as well, as a sort of a little thing. Graham Chapman's little cameo as the guy that works at Scorpio, and then just
Yeah, I saw.
randomly put in Julian Glover.
Yeah, yeah, I saw David Frost's name as an executive producer, and my very first thought was the David Frost, and then as
Yes.
the movie went on, it's like I'll bet it is.
He started off doing a lot of comedy stuff. That was the week that was the Frost Report, like very so much satirical stuff on the TV. It was only sort of like however many years later that he sort of transitioned to doing the serious stuff, which arguably really arose because of the Nixon interview. And then it was like, okay, he's willing to take on the political bigwigs, and because he'd sort of know of that sort of thing, you probably have a lot of tasty stuff that you could bring in.
It sounds so much like you just described a podcast.
Yeah.
Starts in comedy, gets a serious interview, does serious interviews.
Oh, he still did lighthearted. He hosted a game show called Through the Keyhole, where it was like, here's this famous person's house. Can you guess what it is from the clue, sort of thing. And then he'd still sort of have a lighthearted interview with the person, either in their house because they had to film it, you know, because they couldn't make it over, or they walk in the studio and just do an thing. So, like, he did a sort of a weird sort of progression, because he still liked to do humorous stuff here and there, but I guess the serious stuff overtook. And the political situation at the time arguably is pretty accurate as well. It was at a time when it was a lot of case of revolving door, sort of one party in, one party out sort of thing. I'm trying to because there was multiple elections in around the sort of mid 60s, and then also in the mid 70s, a few years after this, ironically, where you had two elections in a year, and I can't remember whether like one party got in and transitioned like within the same year or something like that. But then
I was getting the vibe that this is one of those movies you could say is really prophetic in how crazy it is, that a lot of it starts to line up. But I did also feel like there was probably a lot of stuff that's lost to the time also. But not enough to hinder the movie, but enough to where I felt like there was some stuff where I feel like if I had more context, this would make more sense to me.
Well, one of those bits is probably, I don't know how many Americans know about the sort of Enoch Powell and the sort of Rivers of Blood and everything. Enoch was a very sort of, very much like the character is the the Shadow Home Secretary giving the anti-immigration speech about the woman, the old age pensioner, supposedly being poked at with sticks, allegedly from his seventh hand account, probably, but the sounds of it, the way he was talking, I heard from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. Um, but there was a lot of talk at the time, like whether some of the rhetoric that he used there was going too far, and it sort of rose up again in or around actually after that. 'Cause I'm pretty sure there was quite a lot of fascist and sort of stuff, certainly in the 70s and 80s. If you've seen This Is England, you've seen a lot of that, the National Front and everything. So there's a lot of things like that. But then I also like the fact that, like, what we should do, fire him but then replace him with somebody else, but rather than actually addressing that we're racist, because I guess they realise that their voting body has the sort of, maybe the views that would actually keep them in power that way. Which you see a lot of that in, like, the thick of it and in the loop. It's like, what are you willing to bend to make sure you keep the power, sort of thing. Well, of course, in the case of this, it was the Labour that was incumbent. But then again, was Duff advice given, because Rimmer realised he was more of a conservative at heart than a socialist Labour sort of person.
Yeah, Armando Iannucci definitely kept popping into my head during
Yeah,
this.
a lot of the things.
I just have I've been struggling not to laugh because there was one moment that made me laugh so hard. It was something somebody said, and I wrote it down, and I keep looking at it in my notebook, and it makes me laugh every time I look at it.
I'm trying to think what it might be.
It's very. I don't think anybody else would call this the funniest scene in the movie. I think it just hit me in the way. I don't know, but I just thought it was so funny, and I could not stop laughing.
Go ahead, you might as well.
There's I guess you could call it a running gag, where the one guy keeps getting caught up in racial situations.
Oh yeah,
It's this.
after basically he objects to the party being racist, and then he gets attacked by, I guess, a paid off sort of black guy. Even his response at the time is "Call it, baby," which is
That's the line.
yeah.
That's the line. I just keep looking. I just keep looking down at "Cool It." And then the follow up scene with the lineup is very funny also.
Yeah, I can't quite be sure, but I think it's the guy in the green shirt.
I think it just caught me off guard, because up until that point he's saying, like, all the different phrases, and then just as he's collapsing, cool.
But yeah, becomes MP for the vacant seat of Budleymore, which is a play on Peter's good friend Dudley Moore, and then gets some trophy wife that he screws so bad she loses out at the Olympic trials. What the hell? And then that sort of gradually spins into, because of his background in polling and everything, he basically becomes Chancellor. And the scene I like is like, oh, there's an economic crisis going on. Meanwhile, the party is having a dinner at some stately home with champagne and everything. When they're told of, like, there might be a run on the currency, they're like, oh, I need to phone my wife in Zurich. And then it's like, no, don't worry. And again, to show you how struggling the economy is, Rimmer flies in on sort of like a mini sort of helicopter, comes in and says, "What I think we should do is do nothing." They all agree, and he just flies back off. Like double, triple meaning.
Yeah, it does kind of. This is a, this is a point that's been made to death too, but still, it's true. What's also interesting about this movie feeling so current in a lot of cases is the fact that you know how pretty much in the last since about 2016, we'll say, people have that they're not as into like late night talk show hosts because it's all political jokes and it's all political humor and really nothing like basically every late night talk show is trying to be the Daily Show now
Yeah.
since like 2016 or so. And it's that thing where what makes this movie work is the fact that it was made in 1970 and feels this way, but at the same time it's like how difficult is it to do political humor now that actually is funny? Because we've gotten to this is the part, this is what I was talking about where I said it's basically been said to death, but it's still true. Um, what can you even joke about anymore? Because the joke itself is just literally saying what's actually happening. You can't even come up with a punchline because the punchline is just where we're at.
Yeah. In hindsight, that's like the sort of the dodgy bit. Like you always see that,
And it's like,
but even in sense that sort of the replication of sort of stuff is when we get to the bit where the prime minister basically as a stalling technique goes to visit, I'm guessing it's the US president, and is in that giant queue with like Catholic priests and somebody that I clearly is supposed to be Idi Amin or something. With I do like the touch there where the leader basically goes to sit next to him and then sort of changes to went maybe not, and then sits at the other side of the chair as far away as possible, and then when it gets to his turn to go in, goes in. 5 seconds comes out and like tries to say any more and like no next, and then gets back on the plane and says, "We had a really long, thoughtful, in-depth discussion," which then gets paid back with the American comments and the deaf basically saying, "Wow, we had really great chemistry." So it's like, oof.
there's something else I wanted to go into. Before I do, Owen, did you have any like comments?
It's like it's weird because watching the movie, it felt like it was one series of Monty Python shorts, and that's not a bad thing. I did get and it's not just the connection of the cast. It's literally just that's what it felt like. That's the type of humor that we were getting from this. It's that type of humor that doesn't always get me right away. And given the mindset I've been in lately, I've kind of needed a really good laugh. And I got a few here. Not as many as I would like, but it did deliver in what it was advertised as. Go ahead, AJ.
Were you because like I said, they do some really big humor, but they also do like some really subdued humor, and there might be like some really quick and clever lines that go by. Did you feel a little hindered by YouTube's audio?
I hate. See, okay. Movie Club is the greatest and worst thing in the world to me because it introduces me to movies I've never seen before and reintroduces me to movies that I should have seen before, and also to introduce me to movies that I haven't seen in years. Caveat is because I don't stream, I have to use alternate means, and they don't always work the best. So yeah, I don't. My volume sucks when I watch a lot of videos, and I didn't. It would have probably hit better if I had a better, clearer copy. Like it looked fine. It's just it wasn't loud enough.
Yeah, there were a few times where I had to go back multiple times to kind of listen closely when I missed a line, and so I was sitting there thinking like, man, I probably missed a few really great lines.
I'm pretty
And
sure. I mean, there's never been a Blu-ray release of it. I'm amazed that there's a DVD release of it. I don't
it
even
doesn't have
remember if it was a
release in
VHS.
the.
Go ahead, Owen.
It doesn't have any release in the States whatsoever. It was never released over here.
Yeah. Despite the fact
So
it's got that giant Warner Brothers like US looking logo at the end.
right. Yeah, that music is drilled into my skull, and I'll never get it out. Those musical notes, it seems like every 5 seconds I would hear those sting of musical notes, and I knew that something was about to happen. And it always seemed like it was very nefarious. Like, for example, bad things were going to happen when that music. It kind of like out of a horror movie. I think Michael Rimmer is like a suitable villain, to say the least. He's a great heel. I brought up the Simon the Likeable connection to Get Smart, and this is another thing. Peter Cook brings off that Simon the Likeable vibe.
That's the perfect segue for where I was headed.
By all means, continue.
So, when I finished this, I looked up to see. I didn't find much. I just looked at I just kind of skimmed things, but I was curious what the reception for this movie was in 1970, and I saw the stuff about how because of the release that was later than they'd planned, a lot of people thought that they didn't realize how prolific it was or prophetic it was, because it was released after the fact and made it seem like, oh yeah, anybody could have made this movie and made these jokes or whatever. But the criticism that I saw most consistently might actually be my favorite part of the movie. Apparently, there was a critical consensus that Peter Cook was not good in this, which is very surprising because, is it maybe because a lot of them weren't grasping the character completely? Because I feel like he played the character exactly how I would imagine this character would be played on paper.
Yeah.
Where he's soulless, but in a good way, and when he smiles, it's like there's nothing in there, but he's smiling constantly. And you get the sense that this is just like we were talking about before, how it's like somebody that just seems to supernaturally drop into power. And it's like and then obviously when we get to points later, when he's basically committing murder, it feels right. It feels like we perfectly led up to it. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly something this guy would do. In fact, I'll bet this guy has done this plenty more times before the events of the movie even started. Even when he's with his fiance, you just get the sense that there's no, like, their relationship is a business transaction basically, but you feel like that's like how you don't just get the sense of that relationship, you get the sense that that's literally how his mind works. And so the fact that he seems so soulless and like there's nothing in there seems like that's exactly the way it's supposed to be played. So I'm really surprised that he was like the main criticism.
Yeah, because at first you think the Prime Minister dying is like some freak. Well, it looks like he's going back, so there's going to be some sort of freak accident that's going to lead it. And then you practically see Rimmer pushing him like 2 meters before he even gets to the edge. He's like, "Come on, I want you out of here." And then even the little bit of information that we get when he's locked his wife up in the bathroom so he can get to become prime minister. You get that little tidbit of, I'll go on the phone and go and do an interview and tell them where that gold brick really came from. I'm guessing it's probably
it
a
also
melted
seemed
down
right.
version of what got stolen from Switzerland by Julian Glover. Every time I saw Julian Glover and the bloody giant sort of castles in the mountains, I was like, is this why he signed on for Your Eyes Only? Because I was like getting flashbacks of that.
Yes, what, 11 years prior? I'd
Yeah.
never seen him that young before.
Yeah. Oh.
And seeing him in this right after seeing him in Tar was especially jarring. But I love it felt scarily appropriate, like scarily right, that after the prime minister falls and they're watching back the footage frame by frame, it's like, oh, they're gonna see something here, and they're just like, nope, that's just what it is. We're moving.
You'd have thought you'd have noticed the sort of hands on basically both shoulders. Not even an arch on the hand as if to stop it. Like, just literally like that. Hands open. Push. And then also, like, which is maybe sort of a contraflab, like, not thinking through. They even then cut to sort of Rimmer just staring down, like smirking, as if to go, there's the smoking gun, everybody.
Yeah. Owen just called him a villain. That is such a villain shot to somebody.
And then he becomes the true villain by forcing voting on everybody on anything and everything. But of course, that's his ulterior motive for basically turning the democracy to a some presidential dictatorship, like you see with a lot of God knows how many presidents being ousted out through uprisings across the world. South America, Asia, Africa, a lot of things like that. And then, of course, the final scene with the JFK nod, obviously. Although, come to think of it, when Spigot falls, I can't remember, Arthur Lowe's character falls out because he's so focused on his sniper that he falls out the window and lands on former Home Secretary with the bomb. Considering how many people were close by with the bomb, how many people died? And again, Rimmer's response to it is just, smile and wave, and then just look dead in the camera, and just arch the smile just a little bit more, freeze frame end.
I was wondering if the botched assassination felt pretty similar to the subplot in A Fish Called Wanda with the woman and the dogs, and I was starting to wonder if John Cleese was like, well, nobody saw Michael Rimmer, nobody remembers it, so I'm just going to kind of recycle this botched assassination thing for A Fish Called Wanda.
I mean, he's one of the co-writers, so
yeah,
easily could have been.
About him coming off villainy, also, villainous, was, you had mentioned that this was comparable to The Candidate with Robert Redford.
I felt somewhat similar, in terms of sort of the way this sort of guy somewhat from out of nowhere gets like the big ticket job sort of thing.
Yeah, and what I think in my research it came up again. So I actually watched it again in preparation for this to kind of be able to compare them a little bit. I don't know, maybe it's... Well, this part isn't a maybe. I'm just so disillusioned by politics at this point, as I'm sure many people are, where everything, especially when you see in movies like this or The Candidate, everything everything in politics is so comically manufactured. It's like to the that it's absurd that people still rally in the ways that they do around politics in general, because it's like we all know it's fucking bullshit.
The
Everybody.
amount of stage management that you see, like when they do the party conference, get the protesters in, and then well, he can't cry, so let's put a tear gas capsule in to make sure he cries.
So what I was noticing is the difference between Bill McKay, the Redford character, and Michael Romer is when Redford comes into the candidate, he's like a good dude that wants to do good things, and then it's like when he gets caught up in the machine is when he kind of starts to get corrupted, and we get to that point where he gets so we get the feeling that by the end of the movie, the entire race that just happened is an entire blur to him. Like he went from being the good guy that was just kind of shaking hands on the street to the position he's in at the end of the movie, and he literally the last line of the movie is him saying "What now?" in a panic, and it's like I like the way that showed the machine and how that corrupts them and everything, even the ones that really want to do good. But as much as I hate to say it, it almost felt like Rimmer was more accurate to real life, where they just come in soulless and just there's just nothing in there that's they're the last thing they're thinking about is you, the people. It's literally the last thing on their mind. You, the people, might as well not exist to these people. And that's the exact vibe I get from Rimmer, just being this soulless void of emotion.
Soulless,
the whole
headstrong.
from beginning to end.
He knows what his goal is. His goal is to basically change democracy as we know it. But
it's like I feel like
all to his favor,
the people like
course.
Michael Rimmer, I feel like, are where we are.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. So this wasn't a particularly uplifting week for movie.
I also the one bit I also want to single out the relationship between I'm trying to think, Victoria, I think her name is, the trophy wife. Hang on. Oh no, Patricia and Peter Niss, Denham Elliot's character, because like you obviously Thomas Crown Affair had chess, Michael Rimmer has Scrabble. And like the whole if I put that in love, and it's like, oh no, I'll put in sex, and then I'll put in sexual, and then oh no, I'll make it sexuality. Yeah. Triple word score and all that. And then just like in a really like beautifully done bit, he just puts, well, I'm gonna put N-O. And of course Denham's like, that's not in the rules. You can't do that, it's not even linked up. And she's like, yeah, good night. And it's like there's bits like that are like, if they were in sort of rubbish films, they'd be the best bit of those rubbish films. Like, that's really well put together, and like how you deal with consent. And she only gets desperate when she realizes that she wants out that bathroom to reveal that Michael Rimmer is just a twat. And then even like by the time that she gets to the phone and realizes, oh wait, he's actually Prime Minister. Might as well go along for the ride. Quite literally.
It was also interesting to see Elliot in a part like this, because I usually associate him with like warm characters and almost like father figure characters, even grandfatherly characters. And this guy is not that.
I do like the way, though, it also particularly or accurately sort of showcased how British election stuff goes over here. There is always, whenever there's a general election, there is always a rush between like 2 or 3 towns, as to who can count the quickest, which says a lot because I'm pretty sure in the seat that normally does it, Sunderland, there's like 40,000 votes. So it would literally just be like done, they're the sort of speed people. The other ones are sort of like you have to wait sort of 4 hours till like 2 in the morning when they do it. And then again, the way it's presented in the film, it's just like, oh, we've got our first result. It's not from there. It's actually from somewhere else. And like all the results come in like immediately, and then it's like, oh, here's the last result from where we thought we were going to get the first count because it's only a majority of 5 because they needed to do 3 recounts. I also like the bit as well when he's like, right, let's look at the scores on the doors. Well, no results have come in, so that's interesting. Meanwhile, like, so much time is like trying to look at like little numbers right at the start when you're trying to look into what it means as the big picture, and it's only sort of like when you get to the following morning when you realize the scale of what's happened in terms of whatever the election is. But they always try and make it dramatic. You have the sort of swingometer thing with the arm, which is now done with computer graphics, but back then it literally was just, I'm going to push this thing here and it's going to magically stay there. Look, it's 15%. And then, of course, the international stuff. The poor guy in Sweden that's just like, hello, can I talk? Just, there's a lot of good stuff in there, which is a good showcase of what it is at the time. But I also think it is an interesting prophetic thing of like, be careful, because in a system that is currently, the way it sort of is at the time, if anybody, I feel that there's anybody that could somehow like get the opportunity to flip it and sort of basically become a dictator. I think with the amount of sort of AI and social media and everything, it's more likely to happen now than it was in 1970. That's the problem. That's when it will get shown on TV over here more, and people will realise they told us freaking 55 years ago. Damn it. So quickly have a look at the comments. Josie's the only one that's left comments so far. Josie says, hey Popcastine, this is a clever satire of its time and ahead of its time. If the company and the film were around today, what kind of commercials could you see them making? Oh. I don't know. I'm guessing it'd be more social media stuff rather than television. It's annoying because like we only get to see sort of one campaign from them.
It's hard to come up with something that would be like absurd, since we're in the age now where NFTs happened. It's like,
yeah. True. Get Matt Damon on
it's
the
like,
case.
can you get more? That's what we were talking about before. Was, can you get any more absurd than what's already happened?
Yeah. Any well, not demographics, but any companies or markets you think would be good, Owen?
They could be behind this. They could be behind TikTok. That makes sense.
If they're trying, yeah. Well, considering how governments don't want to use it, but they're still advertising like crazy to the common market. The general people that aren't in government. It does feel like they already would be.
I think TikTok makes the most sense. You want to talk about social media?
What's popular at the minute? Okay, let's run with that sort of thing.
Right.
Uh-oh, did we lose him again?
Yes.
line is moving. Tension mounting. Imagine if Rimmer went on the dating game like in Confession of a Dangerous Mind. I very much thought of that during the game show scene or whatever. Trying to think what. I guess that might be one of the talk segment things. Maybe. If Rimmer was on Confessions, he'd sway. It'd be weird. He'd sway you and probably be the successful winner on the date, but he just quote statistics all the time. But he'd do it in such a smarmy way that he'd be like, "Oh, it's interesting to know." Wait, what just happened?
That's what I was saying. Was it? He'd find some way to succeed, despite having no emotion.
And it's possible that his date would not return alive.
Yeah.
Well, she slipped out the window. It's nothing I could do about it. It was open.
It's gonna show up, I think, somewhere down the line as another one of my picks. But there's a very similar bit to sort of that sort of how you're thinking with Bedazzled, like the real probably peak Pete and Dud, as opposed to that whatever the hell Sherlock Holmes thing they did, just god awful. Especially because I'm pretty sure Peter Cook plays Sherlock as a Jew. Okay. But there's a bit where one of Stanley's wishes is to be like a pop star, and he has this sort of big, like, love me sort of big song. And then here comes Pete's not devil character, who's doing this weird moody song that somehow is also hooked in with the people. And like the lines of his "I don't want you," just monotone, like not giving a damn. And if you feel like there's some Rimmer in there. there's some devilish Rimmer in there with just like the sort of monotone, straight to the point sort of thing, which would be the way he'd do the lines, or for the answers and whatever. Josie mentions Rimmer honeymooning in Budley Moor. Although, is it really a honeymoon? Because they go there and it's basically just a photo op for his blooming political campaign.
For somebody like Rimmer, that's a honeymoon.
Yeah. It was like, yeah. You can have a nice time, but also, way to go. Josie also brings up Eric Bentley, inspired by Enoch Powell and his stuff. Bentley repeats a piece of gossip at an old lady from an embarrassing, unreliable source, much as Powell had. And even Powell gets mentioned in the speech, which is weird because I think that's the only time where they actually reference an active politician in the entire thing. I guess it makes sense because you're not going to have like. I mean, I guess with the pipe you sort of get a Harold Wilson-esque performance from the Labour guy. The weird thing is the guy that leads the Tories looks more like sort of like an Anthony Eden sort of like guy rather than the Conservative. Peter Cook's character may have been seen as an affectionate parody of the film's executive producer David Frost. Frost was once said to have risen without trace, which was a line that I think one of Pete's friends, Jonathan Miller, part of the Beyond the Fringe sort of stuff, does. And becomes influential in politics as Frost allegedly sought to do with his famous power breakfast, which in essence is basically what led him to get the, I mean, I probably the first time international audiences would have paid attention to him would it have been the Ali interviews? Like 72? 73-ish? I think they were the first ones that had international attention for him. And then the crazy thing is, the set designer managed to, as Josie mentions, there's a hanging chair of the type known as an orange bomb, which is what Frost had in his house. But practically most of the entire design of Rimmer's flat, apartment, whatever it is, room that we see, was near like for like how it was with Frost. Even though the set designer had never been to Frost's house. Which is even more eerie. Peter Cuckoo once said that the only thing he really regretted in his life was saving Frost from drowning. Okay. Noticed that he'd been quite peeved by the resemblances in the portrait of Rimmer. Yeah, they began writing it in 67 and finished filming in mid 69. But because it was an election year, but at the time pretty much every year was an election year. That was the irony. Yeah, and on the commentary that is on, I think there's a commentary version on YouTube. Maybe. I vaguely remember seeing it. I think it is out there, but they held it off basically until after the July 70 election because there was an election in late 69. As I say, quick turnarounds, flippy floppy. If the company in the film was to be owned or affiliated with a major movie studio, which one do you think it would be? Ugh. To some extent, at least as it stands now with the way the studios are, probably Paramount. Because Paramount's the only one that, although financially it's on shaky ground, is the only one that doesn't seem to have pissed off people. Because Netflix has rubbed people up the wrong way. Apple's people rubbed up the wrong way. God knows what we've seen with Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney and all their stuff. And to some extent Universal maybe. But yeah, I think Paramount would be the best because they're the ones that would. They might need somebody like the marketing, company to actually spin them out of the trouble that they're in and everything. But yeah, your thoughts, guys?
Did you want to go, Owen, or?
It's not laugh out loud funny for me.
Oh, I meant the major movie studio deal question.
So what's my criteria I have to work with?
Well, basically, the company. Well, I'm trying to think. I'd probably say like you got the big because it's Josie does mention major movie studio. So I guess you could include sort of you got the big ones, but then you could probably put Lionsgate in there, probably A24 because of the stature of them now. Six would probably need it right now. Well, wait, does Six even exist anymore? I can't remember.
Honestly, I think that because of the fact that it was the first one that popped into my head when Josie asked the question, I feel like I might as well just stick to my guns and say A24.
Yeah.
Or maybe Blumhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Blumhouse is a good option too.
Especially with how well they did this week. Yeah, AJ, got a idea?
I don't think I do. I was trying to think of the most recent movie like this, or that could be comparable to this, and which studio did that, but I don't know.
On that note, not to get too political here, but do you think they would be right or left leaning? I mean, I'd say Rimmer is probably more right because he does eventually side with the conservatives. as opposed to the sort of Labour which is traditionally sort of perceived as left wing. It only really changed when Tony Blair's New Labour sort of made it left, but like so far to the centre you wouldn't know it's left. Um, like middle ground sort of thing.
Without getting too much in trouble, I hope, I'll just say there's more people on the right that remind me of Rimmer.
Yeah.
That's all I can tell you.
In the meantime, Cleese and Chapman, who worked on the film, were doing Monty Python at the time, so not knowing if the film they'd spent so much time would happen, they wrote the 19th Python episode, It's a Living, which had the election night special. Which, yeah, to some extent that there is sort of a something akin to that in that one. Not to the same. I guess it's more edited down and whatever, whereas because it's Python, it's very sort of hectic and pacey and everything.
Yes, this one. Python started in '69, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this was like really early into Python then.
Well, 19th would have been because they do 13 episodes a series, so that would have been mid series 2. So whether they wrote series 1 in '68 and wrote the other one in '69, I can't remember when it aired, but at the time I don't think it would have been, because Rimmer came out in the UK, or at least had its premiere like in November of '70. So I feel like it probably would have been maybe in or about the same time. Josie asks, I wonder if Adam McKay's seen this film. Part of me says
almost guarantee it.
Part of me says hopefully, but I'm also not sure, because I feel there's probably enough sort of well-known satirical things that do more of a justice to sort of his style of things. Because Adams always liked to put factual stuff in with his things. I mean, that's why Big Short did so well, because it was like factual stuff to try and explain it to sort of the person that doesn't fully know about it. I think that's probably what he's getting into now. Comedies based on factual events. I don't know. Although I don't know whether Don't Look Up was technically factual. I guess we'll find out in so many years.
Right, it's already close enough. But another reason I think Adam McKay has probably definitely seen this is not just because of the kind of movie it is, but and that he seems like he's probably been inspired by it. But if the Criterion Closet videos have taught me anything, it's that directors know really obscure shit. So I feel confident in saying he probably has seen this for sure.
He mentions that it would be something up at Armando Iannucci's alley. Definitely. Oh, that's something I didn't realise, even though Josie had to give the trivia for it. Rimmer's based on David Frost, but Frost's the production company is David Paradine Productions, and Frost's middle name is Paradine. I wondered why, when Through the Keyhole finished, it said David Paradine Productions, and I never saw him produce anything else. I never realised that Paradine was his middle name. The Scottish regiment is called the Spotforths, a pun on the name of the Seaforth Highlanders. And, oh wow, this was the last film distributed through the Seven Arts subsidiary of Warner Brothers. I guess that fits, because there's a lot of those films from the sort of the 60s that are, WBSA in the graphics. When the election was called in June of 1970, the release was delayed again until December, which Billington felt also blunted its edge. Very indifferent box office performer, and was generally perceived simply as a macabre farcical comedy rather than razor-sharp political satire, as Billington claimed he'd intended, even saying he was aiming to make a British equivalent of Costa Gavraz's then recent film Z? I don't know how to pronounce it. Like bloody. When it's V for Vendetta, it's easier. The phallic rocket that's invented for the space program is called a Caligula missile. I do like the fact though that's pretty much just get the Thunderbirds crew to make something. And we'll pass it off and we'll spin it as if we've actually got these things and it will scare them. Oh, Bride has left a comment saying, how come I always lose interest when it comes to these so British movies? I don't know. Part of me wonders whether it's just like the pacing or whatever. I don't know. Or everything that I'm choosing that's British has got like, people that are too upper class. I don't know. That you lose interest. Something like that. Okay, we've got some award stuff here. Replace one of the editing nods in the Oscars with Rimmer. The winner was Patton, along with MASH, Woodstock, Airport, and Tora Tora Tora. Ooh. I think
what was before Tora Tora Tora?
Airport. Charlton Heston.
I really like Rimmer, but I don't think I'd change that lineup.
If I'd get rid of one, it would be Airport, but yeah, I'd say it probably wouldn't make it in about, really. Also, it's good to see a documentary like Woodstock making it in. Would you make any changes?
Woodstock could have won, honestly.
Yeah. Would you make any changes, Owen, or leave it as it is?
No. Leave as is.
And I'm guessing this is for supporting actor. John Mills for Ryan's Daughter, which won. Chief Dan George for Little Big Man. Gene Hackman for I Never Sang for My Father. John Marley for Love Story. And Richard S. Castellano for Lovers and Other Strangers. So I'm guessing that's for Denham Elliott's supporting role. I'm trying to think. Was Mills lead in that one?
What was that?
Hang on, 1969 Oscars. No, it'd be 1970 Oscars. John Mills in Ryan's Daughter, was that for leading or supporting?
Supporting.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that's for Denham Elliott's portrayal.
Yeah, it's confusing because also for I Never Sang for My Father.
Yeah.
Because that makes it confusing also because Hackman's totally leading in that movie.
Yeah.
It's the supporting
more category fraud. They were doing it in 1971. Damn it.
Yeah, so I would do my usual cop out. I would take out Hackman just based on the fact that he's in the wrong category anyway.
I'll probably go with that one as well because Little Big Man is sort of it's a more significant role than Hoffman's sort of like kind of racist one. Any changes for you, Owen?
I haven't seen any of these movies.
Okay. And then in terms of screenplay, we have Atom, which won, along with Joe, My Night at Maud's, 5 Easy Pieces, and Love Story.
Forgot Love Story is technically original because they wrote it before the book.
Yeah. don't feel comfortable going with that because I haven't seen Joe and My Night at Maud's. I don't want to just push him out because I haven't seen it.
I'll say they were the first two where I was like, oh, I'm keeping those. So.
Same for you, Owen.
Not seen any of the films.
Yeah. And then replace one of the 5 male acting nominees with Peter Cook. So we've got George C. Scott for Patton at 1, Nicholson for 5 Easy Pieces, James Earl Jones for The Great White Hope, Melvyn Douglas for I Never Sang for My Father. That will probably be AJ's answer because category fraud again. And Ryan O'Neal for Love Story. So is it a case that Melvin should be supporting and Hackman should be lead, or?
My memory's a little vague, but I want to say they were close to equal screen time.
Right.
I don't seem like I'm hating on Love Story, but I think Ryan O'Neal's the one I'd kick out.
Okay. I'll probably stick with the 5 as it is. Although, it's a shame that it was Peter Cook's sort of only real solo attempt at sort of doing stuff. All the rest was just being part of an ensemble or being paired up with Dudley Moore for 2 or 3 projects and whatever on the big screen.
And it's just a shame it sounds like it didn't get the credit it deserved.
Owen, do you want to commit or leave out because you haven't seen enough of them?
I haven't seen enough.
Okay. If this took place today, would all the characters be cancelled?
Be what?
If this took place today in modern times, would all the characters be cancelled? As in cancel culture and everything. Ooh.
It doesn't seem like politicians get fucking canceled.
Rimmer would somehow get away with it. Only I think his wife would be the one that I think would have the sort of clean slate, really. She's sort of a relatively innocent victim in it all. Ferret seems like a idiot in charge of the marketing company. The 2 political leaders seem like stuff. They work for who they want. Peter Niss just jumps all over the place, as to who pays him more. Maybe the interviewer. He would get uncancelled because of having to deal with people saying that they're Buddhists. I don't know. That's probably the only one. Oh, and that bird impersonator, because he's credited on the Wikipedia. That bird impersonator on the Stephen Hent show. I don't think we can say anything bad about him, unless he did the bird tweet wrong, and then they go, "Oh, he's wrong, cancel him." Peter Cook trivia: former partner Dudley Moore was said to have based his title performance in Arthur partly on him. He complained that Frost's success was based on copying his own stage persona, and Cook dubbed him the bubonic plagiarist. And then again mentions that according to Alan Bennett, his only regret in life was saving Frost from drowning. Peter Cook, the founder and proprietor under the pseudonym of Lord Gnome of the satirical magazine Private Eye, still going to this day after like 50-something years. Cook was also considered for the Wonka role in Willy Wonka. God. I don't know whether you would have it wouldn't have been the same, obviously, because Wilder would have been... But, jeez. I guess he's got the sort of slender sort of figure as written in the book, so in that respect it'd probably fit. And he certainly feels like somebody that you don't know whether to trust. Like he does
Yeah.
feel like he'd be some sort of recluse.
Yeah, because the thing about the way Wilder played Wonka was he was like that. He's really hard to read, but it does seem like you could believably warm up to him while he's still mysterious. And I don't know if it's just because I have Rimmer so fresh in my mind, but when I see Cook as Wonka, I just see sinister, and that's all I see. I don't know if the warmth would be there.
Yeah. Fun fact about Cleese: reached adult height of 6'5" by the age of 13,
Jesus.
and was 6 feet at the age of 12. And some reason he's making a Faulty Towers sequel. I don't know what that's about. I guess we'll find out when it ends. Some point, maybe. Josie also mentions, if I wonder if the creator of Succession, Jesse Armstrong's seen it, I wouldn't be surprised. I would have thought so. Jesse's very much into, just like Adam and Armando, very much into getting the sort of the tidbits. I wouldn't even be surprised if Nolan's seen it. The question is, would Tarantino have seen it? He practically sees
surely.
everything.
He's probably got some little film print of it or something.
What films do you think could pair well with? Ooh.
I feel like we've mentioned a lot of those.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Some reason I'm trying to think of something that would like be completely the opposite to it and be like a palate cleanser. Like,
What about In the Loop?
yeah, that's yeah, because that has less sort of like negative connotations, at least by the end.
Right.
It has the right sort of like showing you the ineptitude of politics rather than just showing somebody that knows how to work the system. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was rewatching The Candidate, I kept thinking about Bob Roberts.
Yeah.
But like I said, most of these people aren't like sinister the way.
Well, you could always recommend something like a Bulworth.
Yeah, Bulworth came to mind. I was gonna say, but basically what I was gonna say that I was holding to myself was Bulworth is probably gonna be a movie club. It just won't be soon because we talked about this just now, and it'd be
Yeah.
too close. I feel like.
Yeah. I'm having to kick Bedazzled into the long grass for 2024. Um, bringing this forward, but I wanted to get this one out while at least there was some sort of YouTube rip, rather than struggle to find it on a different, place on the internet. Because over here, that's just as. I think it's actually more accessible for you guys than it is over here. Like somebody has it on streaming. Over here, it's like, have you found a hen's tooth? Yes, congratulations. But yeah, we'll start off with you, Owen, with the final thoughts because you did it by accident a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it's fine. I like to say product of its time, and it is, but it's also very topical right now too. Whether right or wrong, it's interesting to see how someone can go from relative obscurity to like prime minister, just because he's got a great personality. Yay, politics. I did enjoy the polling scene where everybody was awkwardly standing in one spot in the area, and John Cleese kept asking for the time, and it was literally like a minute later he asked for it again, and the guy was like, seriously, I'm not, don't ask me what time it is again. I thought that was really funny. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. It's something that is I would call this a lost gem. Like I hopefully more people see it. It'd be nice to get more fresh eyes on it. I mean, even just doing a movie club on it, I mean, it puts it out into YouTube land. So I mean, somebody's gonna see this, and you're gonna get like someone like a Spencer Reed that's gonna see this years later and be like, maybe this will become their new favorite movie. You never know.
It won't become Pacific Heights.
No, of course not. Nothing will.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I think be seen more just based on the fact that somebody really needs to remaster it to start off with. And I said I think that'll help. Like I said, I feel like the dialogue and everything moves along so quickly, and some of the jokes are so clever that some of it can pass by real easily. And with a not stellar copy, that's probably gonna, like I said, some of the more subtle stuff will probably go by the wayside for now. But and like I was saying, the fact that I'm sure there's stuff where I feel like there was a context in 1970, especially in the UK in 1970, especially that was going past me. But even despite that, it was still being able to see it as this sort of, and I know it's this really tired thing to say when something is like, oh, so it's like now, because there's like, it always seems strange when that happens, but it also feels like we say that about a lot of movies. But this one in particular, where like I said, the way they approach it with a character that's so interesting because he's so soulless and emotionless, and is the embodiment of something we've seen so many times that we can't explain. The phrase that just went by, where they were talking about with Frost, risen without a trace, was that what it was? That's pretty much the perfect description of people like this. And yeah, and like I said, to see a movie like this, regardless, where it's like, oh yeah, I feel like I see that all the time, and it's a movie from 1970 that could be considered dated in another aspect, is pretty wild. So yeah, and the way you can see like the influence and stuff like of its time, like The Candidate, and then later stuff like the Yanucci stuff is wild. So and I will stand by how underrated Peter Cook's performance is.
Yeah. Um, I still say, because of its accessibility and because it never really gets shown on television as compared to Bedazzled, it's probably one of the best Peter Cook performances that people haven't seen. Yeah, they've probably seen him in sort of like his cameo sort of bit in the wrong box and sort of Bedazzled and things like that. But I think there's an accuracy like about some of the things and the way it's portrayed that there's something to be said by it going at some point. So there you go. All in all, I get relatively received, if I will say that.
There's one more phrase I wrote down here I forgot to mention.
Oh, go ahead.
It's basically how it's something I feel like is prevalent in British humor, but it fits so well into political humor. The phrase I wrote, does that sound accurate?
Which phrase? The line broke up just for that one point. Damn it.
I wrote down subdued hostility is prominent.
Yeah. It's always boiling under the surface. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that is your lot for this movie club. We'll be back 2 weeks on the 23rd of July to discuss Owen's pick of Snake Eyes.
Yeah, I did not realize that when we did this and when we were planning on trying, AJ was talking about keeping something like Bullworth for down the line when it's not something we talked about recently. One of the main plots of Snake Eyes is a political assassination. So We're going to talk about that again in 2 weeks, technically speaking.
All that sort of fun. In terms of other stuff on the channel, I've got a few snack stashes to get done and put out, which will probably be out this week, depending on schedules and all that.
100%.
There's a few. I think you've got a few more sipping snacks.
One.
Oh, one. Uno.
I am badly in need of content right now.
No problem. I need to get my finger out or my stomach empty or something.
Yes.
AJ, I'm trying to think. Where are we on the movie reviews front?
They're coming. I just don't know what they're gonna be.
Yeah.
I was going to see, or I was gonna try to see Indiana Jones this week, but this past week was so fucking exhausting. I think I'm still recovering from that. So once I decide which movies are going with which, you'll have that also, because like Creed 3 and Guardians 3 and Blackberry and Asteroid City and stuff like that are all stuff I've seen and saw a long time ago that haven't been talked about yet. So
you just mentioned two best movies of the year in that diatribe.
Also,
yeah, so those will be coming really soon. I was gonna do Asteroid City while it was like fresh in my mind, and then just everything else piled on.
Yeah.
But
and then of course,
but yes, hopefully, like
Mission Impossible this week as well.
Yep.
Releasing for 1 week, and then we got Barbieheimer. Oh no.
I have tickets for all three things right now.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go.
In terms of social media plugs, I'm at Ash is my name UK. Owen's at Our Own Disney. You've also got the Popcast Network stuff that will give you the account that will give you details on there. You say the line, Owen. You know how to do it properly, rather than me arse it up.
Discord servers, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen the term unstable internet connection more than I've liked to today on AJ's video, but I guess that happens sometimes. Yeah, lots of things coming. I will say that I was able to finally do it after waiting 5 years to be able to do so. I was on the Red Circle on July 4th, and there are 8 videos from Voices of Liberty coming soon. I do also have a shot coming up soon, of course. July 29th is going to be the water parks at House of Blues. All that video's going up. That day is on purpose every single time, every year, because that's how I know who water parks are. So yeah, there's that. So I got some snack stashes coming from Ashley, as he just mentioned. I've got some sipping snacks coming. I got one that's here. I got to film several more. When Tim comes to visit, I'll have some new ones that I'll be able to shoot for you guys. Hopefully, by the time that we get to Snake Eyes on Sunday in 2 weeks, you'll see me again. And if you know, you know. So if not, then I'll be disembodied head for our show to talk about Snake Eyes, but we'll get there when we get there. AJ, of course, cannot be found on any form of social media, and also, just like Keith Richards, cannot be killed by conventional weapons. Leave a comment anytime on any video, and it'll get back to AJ. He was talking about movie reviews. We've got Versus. If you're an AJ fan, obviously you know September and October are your Nirvana, 100%. So many great things AJ has coming. I'm sure that's another thing that he's been the reason why things are not like the newer movies, because we're getting stuff ready for September and October, because there's so many cool things that AJ is doing that I'm very excited to see come to fruition. So yeah, that's your show, everyone. I'll be cryptic for a second and say my apologies for everything lately. I'll be able to explain a little bit more later on. Don't think I'm going away, because I'm not. Ashley is the host for the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens with that. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get your questions in to our Discord server if you'd like to. Or Ashley is going to try to put the link up early so you can get your questions up early tomorrow night.
Considering how 2 hours went kind of crazy, I'm going to put it to 90 minutes. So the link to where you can put your questions and everything will be up on our channel in or around 4:30 Eastern.
Yep. And 6 o'clock we'll do our normal Q&A show. We've got some other things to do as we always do here. And that's your show. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for listening. Check out some films because in a month we're going to start this whole shindig again, which we're predicting the big 8 categories of the Oscars. Just in time for the fog to rise in, if you know what I mean. In the meantime, stream intellectual property. Always look on the bright side of life. And in the meantime, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. And until next time, boys and girls, that's all we got to say about that.